today. And I would like to welcome here, though we met already yesterday, Tom Seller from Yale School of Drama, where he's a dramaturg and dramatic critic, or you teach dramatic criticism, but you are also editor of the Journal Theatre, right? And you will give us very quick insight to the curating the unexpected.
Thank you. Good morning. Sorry, I have a cold, so it's a little bit of a struggle, but let me know if you can't hear me. Okay. About 10 years ago, the experimental American theater maker Richard Foreman wrote a play about the exhaustion of Western civilization. He told me, in an article I wrote for the Village Voice, the old culture with Goethe-like figures who had the whole world in their head and spoke with great eloquence and were wise, I don't think that culture operates anymore. In his play, The Gods Are Pounding My Head, Foreman imagines a world now inhabited by what he calls pancake people. These are people who are thin, because instead of including all the history of Western knowledge inside of our heads and shaping a vertical castle out of that knowledge, we have it all at our fingertips with computers, and we don't have to keep it inside ourselves. By following all of these bits of information, we become spread horizontally like pancake people. This is Foreman's idea for his play. But this new pancake reality is what I believe we are confronting as educators, as the first generation to be raised with the internet comes of age and begins to make and watch theater. In my experience, the current generation of students, like many other people in 2018, is distrustful of expertise or expert knowledge delivered via vertical systems or hierarchies. After all, they have, or they think they have, all of knowledge right at their fingertips, knowledge available on the screen, knowledge seemingly tailored, curated perhaps, to their expectations and their tastes, efficiently served to them by algorithms. In my professional work and in my role as an educator, I have been exploring how models of curation can help us at this moment of cultural reorientation, as we look for horizontal models that can gradually replace vertical ones. Imaginative curating offers alternative formats. It designs new modes for seeing, and curation can disrupt the field, asking new questions, calling for new priorities and commitments. How can we make more room for curation as a mechanism for educational discovery, for artistic development, and in the struggle against homogeneity and pancake thinness? I teach in the Department of Dramaturgy and Dramatic Criticism at the Yale School of Drama at Yale University. And the school and the department have a kind of unique position, which in recent years I realized positioned us very well to introduce courses in curation and curricula in curation to supplement what we already do in teaching dramaturgy and criticism. We are a professional training program. We are a conservatory. Yale School of Drama trains master's level students and some doctoral students in all areas of theater practice. And the school is completely integrated with the Yale Repertory Theater, a large professional producing house with a significant commissioning program. But the School of Drama, which is largely a traditional conservatory, is also situated as one unit within a major research university, Yale University. We're next door to Yale's School of Art, School of Architecture, School of Music, and a School of Law, which does very important human rights work and so on. Each of these schools is a global center for research and for training in their fields. And each of these schools is a beautiful Goethe-like tower of vertical knowledge. Yet we have surprisingly little to do with each other. And there are few horizontal, interdisciplinary collaborations between these individual schools. We are all living in our little towers. We are responsible for teaching excellence and rigor within our disciplines, and that has made interdisciplinary exploration an afterthought for many years. But times have changed. In the last decade, our department trains devised theater dramaturgs and dance dramaturgs, as well as the original classical model of dramaturgy. And more recently, I created 2 new courses on curating performance. In 2014, I introduced a new course on curating performance, which has combined students from the School of Art who are interested in visual practices and performance practices, dramaturgy and criticism, and also students from our program in management and artistic producing, 12 or 15 students. And I operate the course partly as a seminar, partly as a salon, and partly as a workshop, which is exactly the dynamic that I want. I want to avoid teaching codes or methods of curation, which I think would result in the homogeneity that we see throughout the field in the professional curation. I try to be suggestive and not prescriptive, as you can see from these various screenshots I've taken of the enormous syllabus of the course. We begin by reading in the discourse of curation, sometimes from the visual arts, sometimes from the emerging literature on performance curation. And we talk about the history of curating, cultures of curation. We talk about site and duration, a fancy way of talking about time and space. We're talking about decolonizing the curatorial imagination, but we don't do methods. We might read the philosopher Boris Groys on how values are formed around new or newness. Or we read the esthetician Brian O'Doherty on the ideologies that are expressed in different kinds of institutional spaces. So in this part of the course, I'm interested in forming a critical approach to curating, extending the work that our students are already doing in criticism and in dramaturgy into new dimensions. In the second part of the course, guest curators come and discuss their work. We had Soja, for example, talking about her work on the Prague Quadrennial. Not festival directors or artistic directors in a traditional sense, but people who have invented or reinvented platforms to investigate critical ideas or linking live arts to critical ideas. Then the students create their own original curatorial platforms as final projects. 5 minutes. These combine real artists and existing projects with aspirations and ideas. And the students must define their project goals in critical terms, making renderings of the space in which the projects will take place, describing the intended public, and accounting for the documentation and the contribution to knowledge that it will make. This is one of the central ideas of the course, to think not only about the practice of curating, the practicalities, but also what the scholar Beatrice von Bismarck calls the curatorial, the advance that a given project makes for the field, the knowledge which is generated through collaboration. So here's one example of a final project from that class, just submitted earlier this month by my student Amauta Marcin-Firmino, who proposed a platform for young performance makers of color, Black, Latinx, Asian, Middle Eastern, all young performance artists who use live bodies to challenge the politics of racial visibility. He identified the artists and the project he would like to put together. He wrote a critical commentary on why they should be seen together, and he made a dossier showing how it would work in space and on a calendar. Next year, I'm introducing a curator's lab, which will take these critically centered acts of curating one step further. In this curator's lab, the students will make their proposed curatorial projects happen, learning how to adapt their curatorial ideas to real life, to contingency, to artists who have different ideas. But they will also be able to propose their own module courses, essentially curating one portion of their education. They can define a subject area that interests them as a small group. For example, one group wants to study applications of critical race theory to live performances. Another group of dramaturgs wants to get together and collaborate with students in our Department of Projection Design and students from our Department of Sound Design to study the dramaturgy of night clubbing, culminating in a fantasy clubbing event open to the public. The school will offer them a budget for their approved modules, and they will be able to invite guest speakers and artists. I will help them to identify their goals, help them with the scope of their project, help them determine the structure, and then help them identify the constellation of participants. And I will point them to university resources that can support their investigations. But if all goes well, they will be curating some of their own courses as an engaged, horizontal educational initiative, learning how to learn, how to make an investigation, how to make choices in a format which they are responsible for devising and for assessing. With this freedom will come some responsibilities which we have yet to confront. We are also exploring the possibility that our doctoral degree, which currently has a critical focus and a scholarly focus, could in the future include curatorial research and projects as a centerpiece of the research. So my aspiration with all these projects is to introduce a critical curating to the field with unexpected creative outcomes while simultaneously building a framework for change. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And now I would like to ask kindly Sibyl and Florian if you can come here. Sibyl Heim and Florian Reichert. They both teach at the, or just Florian?
You'll stay there.
Okay, and you will be here. Okay, but we are both here. Okay. They both teach at the University of the Arts at Bern, right? And they will talk about Expanded Theory, which is a study program that you are teaching or leading. Am I right?
We are doing experiences.
Yeah. All of us here. Okay. Yeah, come here. And do you want microphone?
No.
No? Okay.
It's okay. I will talk very loud and you will understand. Without microphone, it's okay. Yeah. Okay. So, in the back. Could you hear what I said? Yes. Okay. So, well, the theme was devised theater. So, what is it? What does it question? What is the space to redefine? In which social and cultural context do we question the artistic work and the many ways of approach? Is there any artistic relevance of us being responsible for teaching in our universities in relation to the theater that nowadays students will do when we will be quiet and deaf? What are the roles the public wants to play? Is it the theater that talks and the public that listens? Or is there a more balanced communication possible, wanted, desired or denied? Who will finance the realization of artistic ideas in the field of theater in the future? Do we, responsible for our educational programs, and they, students, really want to communicate? And how? What is devised theater? Is there an opposite to devised theater? Or does there only exist devised theater with different ways of devising? Could one say, once there was a timeline in theater production processes, writing, reading, conception, direction, scenography, costumes, rehearsal, premiere, and sequence of performances. And now there's a continuous interaction of all means, which at the end establish a performance. Is that all? It will always stay theater, just a slight difference in how we create it. So why bother so much about it? Or is it more? The change in arriving to performative moments changes the moment itself. Creation becomes more complex. Rules are redefined for every creation. That makes it difficult, or positively spoken, an adventure. The question is, do we as universities want to be part of it? And if yes, in which way? This is only a part of the question that arises when we question a model of artistic production that was redefined cultural heritage by the UNESCO, das Deutsche Stadttheater. That's the context our education used to move in. When we think of a devised theater, we can't neglect the circumstances in which it raises the reasons that lead to the desire or and the necessity to do it. So, where do we come from? It's a kind of story once upon a time. There was the 1990s, 4 years to study German language theater for German language theater houses. Students came every year and passed 4 years, all from German-speaking countries, leading to a contract with the old lady. Teachers got a bit bored, especially one teacher, Norbert Klassen, his name, realized that changes in fine arts could be interesting and influence the existing paradigms of theatre. There was someone like Boyce, something like Fluxus outside there, for example, and it was clear that the theatre, although being financed by democratic societies, in itself were ruled in a very monarchist way, and the uprising Regie Theater could generate wonderful performances, but on the basis of dictatorial structures. So we started to rethink. 1909 until 2008, still 4 years of study, but disciplinary study was accompanied, or should one say, questioned by spaces where freely invented projects were placed. For not to repeat theatre structures, hierarchies were abolished. No classes and no predominant teachers. Everyone, student or teacher, can propose a project. It is presented on the rote sofa, the red sofa, and the students can vote for the project they want to work in. Projects with most votes take place. Those with none or little interest, as well from teachers, they perish. It worked. Disasters and highlights were created. There was no great concept about it, which was fine. I think no one did know the word devised theatre at those times. They just did it. All could have gone happily, if not. Bologna arrived. 4 years to 3 years. Fighting with politics began. Theatres will not accept our students anymore with only 3 years. Do not do those projects and stay disciplined. But we need that. There are more and more other possibilities doing theatre, places to produce, places to perform. We cannot neglect this as a professionalizing university. So they said, we give you a master where you can be as progressive as you want, or even better. The order is be progressive in the master and drop projects in the bachelor. And so we did. We built up a master program. There are no classes anymore, but basically 4 different fields of activity in which every student attends a fixed number of courses. Individual work related to a personal project, accompanied by tutors. Modules like Individuelle Vertiefung, which in English could be named individual concerns, often linked to the master thesis, aims find the base and strength of the individual need to come closer and to realize personal artistic precision. Building your house. Second, Begegnungen, encounters. Meetings with persons from other professional fields, not automatically linked to the world of performance, like neurology, cooking, astronomy, architecture, journalism, politics, and others. Aim, meeting other positions, getting impulses from outside, being provoked, verify your own position, and eventually crack it. Immersion. Performers, choreographers, artists, musicians give workshops with a duration of 1 up to 5 weeks where they produce and the students emerge, find their performance position in an artwork which takes advantage of the multiplicity of artistic positions. Well, that happens. Transfer and interdisciplinarity, being able to place own artistic work in other contexts and enrich the whole. Everyone gives another flavor. And the Master Campus Theater Schweiz. That's 4 Swiss universities for theatre, Bern and Zurich with the German language tradition, Lausanne French, Warsaw and Ticino with physical theatre, have a common register, which is quite a book, of their modules open to the students of the other parts of the campus. And they have 1 week every semester when all the students, which is 60, come together, gathering around a specific theme, a big market of artistic positions, characters and attitudes. Aim, network, communicate, explain yourself, and having fun with work. Yes! Lecturers are international, and there is no fixed employed lecturer. The group and its characteristics is always changing, and so do the lecturers we invite. The tutors for the individual work are chosen together with the student in relation to the work the single student follows. And the students are international too. They come from all different disciplines. They have different languages, linguistic and artistic. That means they have already a capacity in their home discipline, which can be theatre, can be music, can be dance, can be literature, can be puppet theatre, and so. Necessary is a bachelor degree and or a professional experience. They are heading for new horizons by bringing themselves and their home discipline into contact and relation to others. The known, the unknown, and the new. They apply with a personal project. It can be already their master thesis, but as we know, things always move. Our themes at the moment. How can we make accept the old lady, those bachelor students who insist to be loved by her? Bachelor and master students are living on different islands. What can we do to make them meet? Heterogeneity of profiles, find the languages to communicate. Space of reflection. If you abolish a very established system, lots of questions, artistic and structural, arise. Contextualization of your work. Devised theatre productions risk to be ego-based. Allowing master students to continue their professional work, what happens to program if they are absent? The risk of lack of commitment and liability of concentration. What we want is to help the students to make their way as performing artists. We want to help them find out what are their individual artistic aims, talents, qualities, and what routes might lead to what they want. Help to find out is not the same than to teach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florian Reichert, did performance lecture here. And now I would like to ask Jan Hančer, who is a dramaturg, translator, Czech translator, and teacher at one of our departments, and at the same time now boss of the whole academy. Jan Hančer, welcome.
Thank you, Luigi. I'll try to make my place neat and working with my speech. Well, this was a lucky coincidence. Our department in this school is generally located between the alternative theatre department and object performance, and between the classical dramatic art, dramatic theatre department. As compared to the object devised projects, for instance, or dance design projects, this department builds its character mainly on the tradition of a narrative theatre, which built up in this country from the Czech avant-garde through the theatre of the 60s, and was sort of personalized in the founder of the department, Ivan Vyskočil, who was a trained psychologist, philosopher, writer, actor, and teacher. This department builds on individual work, and teaching acting there is unthinkable without preliminary work, which is strongly based on a specific dialogical discipline called acting with the inner partner, or dialogical acting with the inner partner. This is a sort of prerequisite for everyone who wants to study there. This is a self-integrative discipline, using theatre as a tool, or using being in the spot in front of other people as a tool of exploring oneself, of exploring the communicative regime with oneself and the audience at once. This is extremely important, and I very doubt that without this preliminary experience I could teach devised theatre as an approach to acting, because people have to build something and to explore something before they can do what we do. The other source would be the Brecht street scene. I believe that I don't have to explain Brechtian the street scene and the model for epic theatre. It seems maybe to you as an obsolete method developed by Brecht, who never did it actually, because he couldn't. He worked in huge theatres and he could not do that. But he, I don't know whether consciously or not, developed a unique model for authorial theatre. Because, as in the street scene, the witness of a street scene, of a street accident, when a driver crashes with a pedestrian and the witness explains to the bystanders what happened and how. The narrator, the witness, has to be in charge of the situation. He distributes the parts to the individual actors, and he combines the narrative mode with the mimetic mode that he shows, and he talks. And this is done in a fluid moment, in a fluid movement of his behavior. And this is the model for authorial acting. So this is the second important source of inspiration. And now, how to work with it in a devised manner? You know, the devising can be devising when using movement, devising with using objects. Our devising is devising using behavior and narrative. By behavior, I mean the most general background of any acting. Usually it looks like this. We assemble at the start of the semester and we map the thematic field. We talk about what would be good to work about, what theme would be interesting to them. Usually, I have an idea somewhere here, because also I want the theme to be enough, general enough, and sort of archetypal enough to involve not only the so civil, pedestrian, everyday engagement, but to enable them to engage in the more profound layers of their personality and cultural experience, which is assembled and can coagulate about a strong theme like that. For instance, we did a theme called generally Father. Father is a fatherly figure. It is a symbol of patriarchal society, of a sort of a hierarchy arrangement. And father is a concrete person, meaning to every one of us, so that they can engage. They can use their autobiographical material, write it down. And I don't need the text being literary jewels, not at all. Their experience is important. And then we take the text and we often recontextualize them. We put them into situations for which they often were not written. And the people have to become in a distant way to their texts. They become these texts are objectified in a theatrical situation. We combine this with devised, really developed improvisations, and we contaminate it with the speech levels or the linguistic levels which are not familiar to them. For instance, when we work on a father theme, we took the Old Testament in Renaissance translation and we contaminated their speeches with this. We also, for instance, provoked them to work on the themes as the otcovské požehnání, patriarchal blessing, which is quite uncommon concept for normal people today. But they sort of developed and devised situations like a son and father in a car. When the father gives him the sort of blessing in a car for his life, for his future life. So this quotidian and the profound creates a tension, both in a linguistic level and in situational level, and can really make an interplay of these facts working. This is one branch of what we do, and usually in the second semester we take some play, some dramatic work, and we deconstruct it and rebuild it according to our experiences, themes, the themes which are found in the material. We usually destroy Chekhov very. We like to do that. Yes. It's this is sort of like when you have a process from an idea, from a short story to drama. We go the opposite way. We take a drama and make from it a stage short story. It's much more epic, it's much more narrative, but it explores the moments of the situations of the play, and the people learn to develop the distance, to exist in the present moment, to use the narrative mode and the mimetic mode at the same time. So I think that this is almost everything I wanted to say for now, and now I a little outlined what we do, and it may seem as a method. If it looks like that, it's not very precise. Method is a rude word in the department. We use the word approach rather. And this approach has its problems. And I'm fully aware of them. And maybe we can leave it on the discussion. Yes. Thank you very much.